Nigeria and other African countries have abundant mineral resources but can drive revenue generation and impact development. But external forces and terrorists continue to exploit these resources to fuel conflicts. And at the end of the opening ceremony of a two-day African high-level meeting on counter-terrorism, President Bola Tinubu said foreign cash is fueling illegal mining and terrorism on the continent. The president stressed the need for African countries to strengthen regional cooperation and institution building to address terrorism. Let's share the story by our correspondent, Femi Akonde, with you. All right, since we don't have that report yet, but let me quickly get your perspective on this, BKO, because this matter, we've been talking about insecurity and hearing that external forces might be fueling the rise of insecurity in the country. What do you make of this, even though we definitely know this could be the case?
No, that is the case. The foreigners continue to exploit our resources, and they thrive on, expanding the conflict in our continent. What, for example, did NATO go to Libya to do? What's their business in Libya? Look at what they eventually turned Libya to. Libya is a semi-failed state where large portions of the country remain ungoverned. Large portions remain ungoverned as we speak. There's a central government, what is supposed to be a central government, that literally controls the capital and nowhere else. It's just similar to what we have in Mogadishu. Oh, you control the capital. After the capital, gunmen rule the hinterland and other places. So that's a failed state in the real sense of the word. Now, what the president is saying is, look, a lot of resources that we could have used to make life better for our people, provide health care, provide good roads, provide education for our people, stimulate food production, we are spending on weapons to counter terrorism that is fueled by foreigners. In our country, for example, we know that Boko Haram was or is still affiliated to ISIS. And ISIS is not based in Nigeria. They send weapons to them. They make funds available to them to buy weapons in the black market. The collapse of Libya has allowed a lot of illicit weapons to come in through the land borders, through Libya, that has extensive land border with Niger Republic. Niger Republic is landlocked, but it has extensive borders with both Libya and Nigeria. Borders stretching from Kebbi in the northwest to Yobe in the northeast. Wow. Yes. Jigawa, there's a border with Niger Republic in Jigawa State in the northwest. We have in Katsina as well. We have in Sokoto. So these weapons come in. The Chinese are here in Nigeria, illegally mining tatalite, uranium, and all kinds of things. And we've not found a way to rein in these guys. I remember sending people to do a story about illegal mining in Osun State. And thugs hired by the Chinese chased them. They were lucky they got into their car and fled. Our own people being used to stop us from exposing illegal mining in Osun State, in the Ilesha area, where they've created artificial lakes because they just dig and dig and dig. You dig, sometimes you won't find anything, but you've dug as much as 80 meters into the ground, creating lakes here and there, destroying the environment. So there is a lot. The president is saying now that Africa countries have to work together.
Right.
There is a need to unite on intelligence sharing. There is a need to revive the counter-terrorism structures that were there. There's a need to revive them. He also talked about the need for, which I found really interesting, the need for the standby force on the continent that will address threats from these non-state actors. So that's the one that I found to be of interest. Right. How do we come together? I know that in the West African sub-region, at least the Lake Chad region, we have a multinational joint task force commanded by a Nigerian. That's the structure. It's a Nigerian officer that must control it, but the headquarters is in N'Djamena, Chad. We have that one that has been helping to fight Boko Haram for years. How do we ensure that we have something like that, a standby force for the continent? There will be a big challenge in terms of welding this kind of fighting units together. I know that the African leaders will have to brainstorm, disagree, agree, and all that. That will be a real challenge to have a standby force confronting terrorism on their continent. That will be a real challenge. But the president has already suggested that, and I think that we need to confront the foreigners who are funding terrorism with the proceeds from illegal mining. He said that those who do not know that foreigners, that there's a link between terrorism and
foreigners.
And illegal mining. He said there's a link. I agree. In Niger State, for example, Nigeria's biggest state, there are a lot of mining sites. There is gold, there is so many things. So there is no way in the areas where these terrorists control, no one can stop them from mining those things illegally. And the proceeds from it, they will use the proceeds to fund, to buy weapons and all that. Look at how they are spoiling the environment.
Well, let's quickly take this report by our correspondent, Femi Akonde, talking about President Tinubu's calls for counter-terrorism, regional counter-terrorism on the continent.
Terrorism has caused significant losses in human, infrastructural and economic development globally. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa have been hit hard by terrorist attacks.
We can overcome the challenges.
Despite significant investments made by affected countries, President Bola Tinubu believes that a more robust approach is needed to eradicate terrorism.
We must make the meeting historic and productive. We must show our respective populations that we, as leaders, we must do more than speak nice words. We must live here with real results.
President Tinubu also stated that Nigeria is strengthening its judiciary to deal with terrorism cases effectively. Furthermore, the country has set aside a fund to enhance counter-terrorism efforts.
We have and will continue to take bold steps in safeguarding our nation and the wider region.
The National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, pointed out that terrorism in Africa is fueled by various factors.
Terrorism in Africa is driven by factors such as foreign terrorist fighters, organized crime, prolonged conflicts, drug trafficking, illicit arms trade.
Nigeria received commendations for its leadership in counter-terrorism efforts in Africa and for hosting the meeting.
We can overcome the challenges posed by terrorism and advance the shared values of peace, democracy, and development that define our common humanity and future.
I think today's meeting is opening the way for further better international collaboration for more leading role of Nigeria in counter-terrorism efforts.
President Tinubu committed to working with regional partners to strengthen arms control measures, enhance border security, and disrupt the illicit trafficking networks that fuel terrorism and organized crime. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
On the African continent. Tunde, you've just seen the report by our correspondent, Femi Akonde, and definitely goes to show that a lot more needs to be done. And BK rightly said that it's, we need to unify ourselves as a people on the continent if we're to deal with this issue holistically. What are those, loopholes that needs to be closed or checked if we're to deal with this?
You will recall that when the Ibadan explosion occurred about a month ago, most of those people who are found to be owners of the mines, controlling the mines, are not Nigerians. They are from other West African countries. You go to Zamfara State, go to all the Kebbi State and some other states, you see that most of those people controlling those mines are not from Nigeria. They are from other West African countries. Yes, it was good that the president drew a parallel between foreigners who are controlling most of the mines in West African countries and the terrorism we have here. So what he failed to do is to also draw a parallel between the connection between banditry, paying ransom to people who kidnap people, and terrorism in Africa. Because all those bandits, when you give them money, what do they use the money for? They use it to procure. So the best thing is to have locally, on a local level. It was good that the Minister for Solid Minerals closed down all the mines in Nigeria, 1,300. I don't know whether they have been opened today. It was also a good decision that they have set up a mining police. Because before you can talk of regional level, let each of the states in West Africa control their locals. So when you have mining police, the mining police will put in check the activities of people who are not the owners of the mines. They are just employing Nigerians for paying them token. And the money for that is now channeled or rechanneled into fighting terrorism in all parts of Africa. Right. I can assure you that because of the crisis in Libya, Chad, and some other countries, proliferation of arms started from the failure of the Libyan state from 2011 up to now. Because the moment the government failed, and any government in Africa that has been in power for 20 years or 30 years, when there's a state failure, a lot of groups will be struggling to have control, and then you have a lot of arms in Africa. So the best thing is for each of the states in Africa to have a local way of controlling their mines. If they can control their mines and those people who own their mines, before you are given a mining license, you must know your background. What are you using the process for? Who are your foreign backers, foreign customers? Because these mines, they are not only using the money to fund terrorism, they are also using the money to do some other things that is threatening the existence of African states and causing instability in African states. They are using it to look 3 states in West Africa announced their decision to leave ECOWAS. The reasons they gave is beyond all what we know. So the activities of mining in West African countries, each of the states has to devise laws to reduce their activity, to make sure that before you give out mining license, know the background of those who are giving it, irrespective of the money you want to make from mining. Because yes, it's on the face value, they pay tax. But what do they use the money for? To destabilize Africa. And it is only in the interest of the West that Africa should be stable. You also have to know that it's an international politics. It's not in their own interest. They are interested in more, when you have more conflict in the West African sub-region and African sub-region, they have more money. Congo is the richest country in the whole world in terms of minerals. But you know they have not been able to have a government since after they killed this man, Kabila. The place has remained unstable. You can always also trace it to the illegal mining that's going on there because they have all sorts of minerals there. Back here in Nigeria,
Nothing God didn't bless.
there's nothing they didn't have there. Back here in Nigeria, we have a lot of mining sites that I believe today, the Federal Solid Minerals, they are yet to know, to identify all the mining sites we have in Nigeria. And poverty of the Nigerian state people have made it possible for them to employ poor people and pay them peanuts and use Nigerians as a spy on other Nigerians. Like he said, now they were sent out. So the mining police has to be strengthened in all the 30 states of Nigeria. And the federal government should also suggest to other West African states. Because when the West African states are not safe, Nigeria is not safe by extension. So we should have that in mining police in all the states of West Africa to ensure that this money proceeds from mining, illegal mining, is not used to fight terrorism. Because terrorism is for the benefit of the West, because they can sell their weapons. So it has to be a far-reaching decision among all the states of Africa to stop illegal mining and to control those people who are sponsoring it.
Right. Yeah, far-reaching decision, like you said. But BKO, aside from this position that Mr. Tunde has just posited, what other options or strategies can we explore now if we're to, ensure that we do not have an ugly situation in our hands?
Yeah, you see, France as a country, as a former colonial power, has not set the right example. And all that France is interested in is exploiting the resources of its former colonies. They are not prepared to stop. And I sense that the president was partly referring to countries like France. Their activities in the Niger Republic, where they are mining uranium.
Uncontrollably?
Yes. They are mining uranium without restraint. They want that to continue. We all know how important uranium is. They are mining lithium, which is used in producing batteries. All the airplanes use lithium batteries. Niger Republic is rich in these things, and these guys have chosen not to leave now. But a new crop of African leaders is taking a dim view of the activities of the French in its colonies, how they're exploiting Côte d'Ivoire, exploiting all of these, all of their former colonies, and they are saying enough is enough. You heard what the power behind the Senegalese throne, the man who would have become president if he had not been stopped. You heard what he was saying, that France needs to stop its attitude towards Africa, that enough of the exploitation. You are exploiting us and sowing seeds of discord, between us. You make sure that neighbors are not in agreement with one another. They are constantly fighting, and when they are fighting, you are busy packing their resources. And he's saying, look, enough is enough. I know that day will come when those more and more of these French African countries
Will stand up
against France and say, enough of what you've been doing.
Right.
So that's what we want to see. If they want to continue to fan the embers of discord within the continent, sponsor strife within our continent, sponsor violent combustions between our people, then they have to be confronted. They have to be resisted. I know that day will come. We just can't continue like this.
Indeed.
We're already seeing the signs.
Africa must stand for itself.